Hey everybody, and welcome to NA Lit Chat. I'm Amy Evans. It's Thursday, December 11th. We are almost at the middle of this crazy, fun, wonderful month, and we are here tonight to take the next step in planning for your writing career. We talked last week about dream planning with Janet Wallace and got tons of great feedback from that broadcast, so I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. And tonight I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest. Her name is Heather Hildenbrand. You may know her as an author. You may also know her as a writing coach. Hey Heather, how are you tonight?
Hey, I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure. Heather is here tonight to talk to us about doing some creative planning and some business planning and how to balance those two for maximum results. So I want you guys to hear a little bit about Heather and why she was our dream guest for this broadcast, because she really has a lot of experience balancing both sides of what's really critical to making a business here. Can you tell us first about your books and the YA books and also your NA books? Because obviously a lot of our crowd here is very into that specifically.
Sure. Awesome. Well, I started out writing YA
Right.
because that's what I loved to read. So I got started reading again with Twilight and The Hunger Games and all the awesome YA series. And then, so I published like 5 or 6 YA titles. And then, let's see, last year I published my first new adult title. So just like all the readers sort of like crossed over from YA to NA, I think that's where a lot of those readers came from. So same thing with the authors. We kind of, crossed over because that became what we, like to read as well. So I have 2 new adult titles out now as well. So I just do a mix of both. And coincidentally, because I don't want to forget to say this later, I'm actually heading up a project that we just started announcing today. And I'm not even allowed to tell like all the details because it's super awesome and we are teases like that. But it's a collection of new scenes, all from your favorite YA authors, where maybe in that YA book they let the curtain close and didn't tell you everything that happened that went on because it was YA and they had to stop. And so we're going to finish our scene, and we're going to give you like the goods, the dirty stuff that you didn't get to see at the end of our YA book. And that will be out in February. So I'm excited about that because it's kind of a cool crossover between readerships. So
That's so fun. It's interesting. I got to do something like that for Alyssa Rose Ivy, right when Clicks first came out, and it was so fun. It made me go write Jelly Bean Kisses because I was like, okay, like I was a little bit feeling, I didn't want to admit that I was feeling restricted when I wrote Clicks because I was very careful to keep it clean. But once I got the chance to kind of reveal a little bit more, I was like, okay, I need to do something with this because it's really fun.
See, I feel like that's gonna. I feel like I'm pulling a bunch of authors to the dark side because I've already written NA, so I know what it is and that I can do it and that it's fun. But a bunch of them haven't, and so they're all kind of like excited / terrified of this scene that they have to write. But they're in and they're willing, and so I think I'm like, oh, you have no idea. I opened up a Pandora's box. You're never gonna go back.
Totally.
So,
well, it's funny
now how many of them come out with an NA title by the end of 2015 now.
Probably a lot of them. I remember Jennifer Alban was talking this summer when we both saw her at Utopia, and she said, like, nothing makes you a better writer than having to write the sexy scenes because they can get awfully repetitive if you're not creative about it and you don't kind of work hard. Like, you think it's easy until you've sex 15 times. And I think,
you're a master of adjectives after that, for sure.
Exactly. But you have to be able to, like, draw your audience in. You have to be able to keep it hot. You have to be able to do something unique. So it's as much of a challenge as writing the 15th chase scene in a book,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. With YA, it was always like I had to vary the word intense or tension and find, all the different adjectives. And now for NA, it's, body parts. So,
I love it. Yeah. So, Heather, we usually start our show off with good news from our friends in Twitter, and we're going to do that in a minute. But you have some especially good news in your personal life and in your professional life this year that happened, and I hope that you will share the book with us because, and I want to tell you why I think it's so important that you share them, because you had a very intentional year, and your good news, I think, is like directly related to all the advice that you're going to share. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I'm so glad I finally get to say that it's sort of all coming together. Because, yeah, this year was like, whew, it was a lesson in patience for sure.
But you've been working so hard, and you've been, like, I've been following you, and you've been, like, really careful and really paying attention and really being intentional, I think is the right word.
Yeah. I think so too. I do, and now I get to feel good when I say that because some good things are happening.
So tell us about the two big things the past couple months with you, personally and professionally.
Okay, so number one, and this is in priority order. Wonder later. I did think it through. Number one is that I got married in October. Yay! Thank you.
She looked gorgeous.
It was so exciting, and our getaway car was a motorcycle, and so I rode away in my wedding dress on a motorcycle.
How very NA of you.
Totally. There's a book cover in there somewhere.
I know,
there
it's like
totally
Sons of Anarchy.
Oh yeah, it was great. The marriage we did it. We went through a marriage commissioner, but he's a cool guy. He let us go out to his house in like the country in like this gazebo in front of the woods, and it was beautiful. But we were driving away, and he definitely was like, "Are you sure you got this? Like, tuck in your dress and everything." And I'm like, "Yeah, oh yeah, good to go." And like rolled off, but him and his wife were kind of like, "Okay, they're crazy." So, I mean, I like went in his bathroom and pulled on a pair of leggings and was like, yeah, totally ladylike. It was fun.
So did you have boots on under your dress, like motorcycle boots?
No, we both wore Converse.
Okay,
so
fair
I
enough.
had my Converse on under my wedding dress because it was an outdoor wedding, so it was like I just wanted to be comfortable. So it was cool.
Perfect.
Yep.
And then the second bit of professional news.
Yes, and then so I've known about this since I got married, but I haven't been allowed to talk about it till now. So Imitation, which is my young adult, it's a Clone Chronicles is the name of the series, and it released through Alloy Entertainment last March as a digital-only deal with Amazon, and then last Friday I was able to finally announce that we've also had it optioned for a development for a TV show with NBC. NBC bought the exclusive option to develop it for TV. So that's exciting. There's a script being written right now, and the producers are Jerry Bruckheimer and Alloy Entertainment, which if you don't know, because I am going to admit to you, and this is embarrassing as hell, but I did not know Alloy. I don't know why, but I did not know Alloy until they approached me and I Googled them and fell out of my chair. So
you didn't know Gossip Girl and Pretty Little Liars?
Vampire Diaries, Pretty Little Liars, yes. Everything you love, yeah, that's Alloy, Heather. Yeah. Get it together.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome if you ever have the opportunity to work with them.
Yeah.
Look what they've done with you. And Imitation is one of my favorite book covers ever.
Me too. And you know what? I can't take credit. Even back when before this deal, it was self-published, and so I fought for the cover actually for all my readers. They know I was very public about that and said they were talking about changing the cover, but I fought for it. I said, well, I didn't even fight for it. I said, listen, people are going to be so pissed off at you, and I'm not taking the blame for that. So I'm just letting you know I'm going to throw you under the bus. And they had like an art meeting or whatever, and they agreed to keep it. So it's a stock photo. And my author friend Angeline Case found it just on a stock photo site. And we really didn't even change the photo much. It was so striking as it was. And it survived through all this because everybody loves it.
And was it Angeline, did the cover, or you did the cover, or
she found the image, and then I paid Stephanie Mooney to like do the cover. But I mean, and I'm not saying she didn't do a lot of work because she did, and she's awesome. But what I mean is, a lot of times with covers, you like manipulate something to change it and make it your own. And I know normally you should do that, and I teach authors when I coach them to do that. So don't do what I did. But it just was so striking the way it was. We really didn't even change anything. So
right. No, I just did that with the book cover myself, and I paid somebody to change a lot of like text and all that stuff. But the stock photo, you know, like I was like, I know we should be changing this, but anything we do to it is not going to help.
Yeah, just every once in a while you get one, and you're like, this is it. You can't mess with this.
Yeah, well, that is such good news from your end. Hey, EJ, do we have some good news on the Twitter world?
Absolutely, absolutely. And by the way, I'm thinking about forcing my nieces and nephews at Christmas to act out scenes from my book. It's the same, but not the same as what Heather's experiencing. We might even record it for the
T-shirt that says Jerry. Then put it on YouTube, I'll totally watch that.
I'm just going to sit to the side and scream at them, and then we're going to put it on Facebook, and it'll be just like I'm directing. It'll be perfect. There may be tears.
I would maybe pay to see that too.
Yeah. For the next edition of Lit Chat.
Right. EJ screams at children.
I'm not the only person who would probably pay to see that.
EJ forces children to swear, just like his books. Jules Dixon says, I released 2 more novels in my Triple R series. That sounds very Triple R.
That's awesome. It sounds kind of hot.
It does. That's what I was
like. I like that.
It does. It does.
It's Rest, I believe, is the name of the series, and then My Love and Ride with Love are the books. So congratulations, Jules. That's awesome. SJ Padrona says, I'm in and out tonight, not listening to audio. Boo, SJ. SJ's a good friend, and she's been on the show several times. She said, I'm working on a brand new NA contemporary romance. I know Steph is super excited about that project, so we will. I got
to meet Steph in person last week. I was so excited.
That's right.
It was awesome. We just sat at a signing for 2 hours and basically talked to each other. It was maybe not as social as we were supposed to be, but I had a really good time.
I felt bad for calling you guys out for wearing sweats underneath the table, and Steph confessed to wearing yoga pants. So
I will tell you, I was the dumb one in a dress, tights, and heels on a rainy day, and I just was like sitting there at dinner, and I was like, I need to go home because I need to put on my yoga pants. I was like ready to go to Target and buy something to drive home in. But anyway.
Good news, Brenda Berry says she released a YA box set on Thanksgiving Day while cooking turkey. Turkey. I thought she said undercooking turkey. I was like, that doesn't sound good. She said cooking turkey, everybody. She didn't undercook it. Jeff Beasler, he's also a West Coaster right now, it looks like, and he says how thoughtful of the windstorm heading towards Seattle to hold off until after NA Lit Chat tonight. Thanks, wind. We have a lot of people struggling, though. I will say I've seen a lot of people in the Twitter feed from the West Coast saying their power's going in and out and stuff. We've lost a couple of our helpers tonight. So everybody just be safe. Be safe.
Yes. Everybody, we hope you guys are okay out there, and we know you'll catch up to listen to Heather's podcast later.
Right. Usher Evans says, I just got my second proof in the mail for my March sci-fi release. Proofs are so damn exciting, I just gotta say.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
It's Christmas all year round. Kat Vincent, one of our helpers from the West Coast who temporarily has power, looks like. My good news is that my house street isn't currently flooded. That's fantastic news.
Yay!
That is. These pictures are crazy.
Yeah, Kat sent us some pictures and email of like the floods going on outside her house right now. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
And I of course like all the pictures of the waves, but I know that they come at a pretty high cost. So I hope nobody's trying to do fun things in the waves because it doesn't look like that would be a very good idea.
Well, it's California, so of course there are morons out there.
There are,
right
yeah,
now.
Exactly.
That's how it is.
All right, well, that is a whole lot of good news. So, Heather, in addition to your books, and again, this is why I cannot stress enough, we really wanted Heather to come onto this podcast. In addition to what you do writing, you also have a coaching business specifically for authors. And I know you've been doing some broadcasts of your own all year. What can you tell us about your coaching business, why you do it, and kind of like what you learn and what you've learned and what you offer?
Yeah, sure. Well, that came about like a little over a year ago. I was kind of doing stuff like this all the time. I just sort of had a light bulb moment where I realized I'd had friends hit me up over and over again and ask for advice, like, how are you doing this, and how does this work, and what are you doing over here that looks like it's working? And I would just tell them. I found myself giving out advice a whole lot all of a sudden. And it was just, like I said, a light bulb moment where I was like, you know what? Not only are people coming to me naturally, but I love this. I would get so fired up after getting off the phone with somebody because I felt like I had helped them through a time that, you know, when you're new or clueless and it's just such a frustrating headspace to be in when, you know, you've got a book or a couple books out there and you are willing to do all of the hard work that it takes to be successful and you just don't know what those pieces are.
Yes.
And so I don't do the work for you, but I teach you what to do and I tell you what the heck not to do. And I feel like that is like priceless. I mean, if somebody had told me when I started, I could have saved so much time and money and frustration. And I wish I had had that and that there had been somebody out there. So I thought, why don't I do that for people? And so I do. So that's what I do now. And I love it. It's so fun. It gives me kind of a buzz, kind of a rush every time I get off the phone feeling like I helped somebody. So that's how I know it's kind of a lot of work, with the
Right.
writing and the deadlines and stuff now, but it's like, this is what I need to find time to do this because I just love it. So I do both.
What if we're old and clueless?
Right.
You said you help the new and clueless? I'm old and clueless. So.
Well, it's so funny because I thought when I started, okay, clueless, that's kind of my, clientele or whatever. And so I thought new. And I just found more and more, though, what was happening was actually a lot of my peers were struggling and they just didn't want to say so. They were scared to say so because they weren't new anymore. And they felt like, if I'm not new, I've got 5 or 6 or whatever titles out, I should know this by now. And so they were embarrassed to ask for help. And I still find it's harder for authors who've been, especially a lot of the indies I work with, it's just so much harder for them to ask for help. And so for that reason, I formed, I think in March, it's called the Connective Collective. And it's a phone-based weekly meeting. It's a conference call. We don't have a group. You don't have to have a login or a password or a sign-on or a Facebook group where people will spam you with buy my book. There is no check-in. There's no accountability. It's like you just show up at the time, you get the information or you share the information, and then you go and be awesome. And we were doing it weekly for a while, and that got to be a lot, so now we're doing it monthly. But it's totally free. And you sign up, you just get on my newsletter list, and I send out the phone number and the access code every time, once a month, and tell you, remind you, here it is, be there or be square. And we talk about a new topic every time, and that group specifically is geared toward established authors, and that's what I want.
And I've been on a number of those calls before my kids started going to bed too early or too late, and I could still work that out with bedtime, but they have been so helpful. And one of the things that really resonated and, again, really made us think about you for tonight is because when you were doing all this, like, you were paying really close attention to the stuff that you were doing that worked. And I remember at one point in one of the early Connective Collective calls, you said, all of a sudden I realized that not everybody else knew it worked. Like, what was obvious to you wasn't necessarily obvious to everyone else. And that became something very powerful that you've graciously shared.
Yeah, and that was the thing that, really, made me sad, kind of, and that's when I realized that they just were too, I don't know, they're, scared to ask for help or admit that they need help because we kind of came up together, and maybe they don't see me as, the teacher role, and that's totally fine, but I hate that you're going to keep spinning your wheels and doing stuff that doesn't work and keep being frustrated. And so, when I realized, because I thought, I'm not a New York Times bestseller. I'm a really healthy mid-list, I make a full-time living on my writing, which is awesome, but, I'm not, up here. I felt kind of equal with these people, so I thought, man, they must know what I know because they look good over there,
Yeah.
And so I just thought we were kind of all on the same wavelength, and so as I found out that we weren't, I was like, man, that's not fair. We should be sharing this. It should be a collaboration, a sharing, not a competition. So.
Well,
that's such a cool message too. So we get a lot of people in here that we talk about, helping new authors and doing these things, but I think a lot of us always wonder, is there a point of no return? Can I dig a hole so deep, if I don't get this? If you, like you said, put out 3-4 books, none of them are just taking off or doing the things that you're wanting. You always wonder, can you dig a hole too deep that you can't get out of, or whatever. And I love that message that you're saying is that, it's never too late to reevaluate, to reassess, and to kind of take control of what you're doing. So.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think there's any hole too deep unless you just decide it is and give up. That's really the only time you're going to fail is when you stop trying. Otherwise, it's just trying something different that I think matters.
You promote 2 sort of separate but equal tracks, and I really want to dedicate some separate but equal time to both of them tonight. So let's start off talking about the creative side of the business and creative planning and what that is and why it's important. Especially if you want to make money at this. Can you tell us about creative planning for authors and what's kind of critical there?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love talking about this stuff, actually, because it used to freak me out until I knew what it was. I think that's the holdup or what separates some authors from really doing this and being successful is that they're just scared of it because they don't know what it is. So, yeah. So for me, information is key. Information is empowerment. If you have the information, you can go do it right. So creative planning is basically just knowing what projects that you're going to do, the actual writing, which books or series you're not just going to work on but actually complete. And I always recommend kind of having a really good idea of that as far as 12 months out.
Okay. So you want people to look at their calendar and think about what they want their release schedule to be, and then work from there for a production schedule? Is that what you're talking
well,
about?
that's kind of the business end. So what I'm talking about when I talk, yes, that's on my list is the answer to your question.
Okay.
Okay, but creatively, I'm talking about the specific project itself. So not just when you're going to put it out, but what is it? What are you going to write now, and what are you going to write next, and what are you going to write after that, and why?
Okay, so what are the big tenets for making those kinds of decisions? What are the most important things to consider?
Sure. Well, basically it means that you're going to choose smart projects because you're not just going to go, oh, well, I feel like writing about vampires, so I'm going to write about vampires. Or, oh, I just want to write a hot story, so I'm going to write a hot story. Like, you have to be on purpose about all of it. And I think that the authors that are most successful, because this really messes with the authors that like to pants it and they don't plot, and they're like really proud about saying like, I don't plot anything, so I can't tell you what my next project is going to be. And that's really when I run into authors that are really scared of doing this kind of thing, because they're very like, no, that messes with my muse, that messes with my creative flow or whatever. But actually, that just messes with whether you're successful or not.
Right.
Because there's plenty of room in there to be creative. But if you can be on purpose about being creative, then you can actually make money at it as well. So it really just comes down to how serious you are about making money, I think.
Okay.
Because the ones that I see that are really super creative but really super successful are the ones that are on purpose about it. So number one is study the market. When you're trying to figure out what to write and what to write next and what to write after that, you can study the market. And a lot of people say, oh, no, people say you shouldn't write for the market. You kind of should, actually.
I agree with you for what it's worth. I always blink 3 times at people who say that they don't agree and that there's no way to predict trends, because you can't always predict a runaway hit, but you can sure look and see what's going to be out a year from now.
Well, and it's different than, old school New York. It's going to take you 2 years to get your book out. So, yeah, there's no way to predict. But now it's going to take you like 3 months if you're serious.
Right.
I mean,
and the caveat should be thrown in there. If you want to sell books, you should be aware of the market and write to market. Like, you can write whatever the heck you want. Like, if you're just wanting to, do that. But if your objective is to make money and sell books, you should know the market.
Right. But then you also have to kind of be willing to let it become a gray area, because my favorite sort of like recipe here is write for the market, and then kind of mix that with an even helping of to thine own readers be true. So you can write for the market and still be happy and sell books and still be happy with what you wrote. So, if you think erotica is where it's at and you're going to sell your soul to write erotica because you're so against it, then don't write erotica, because there's something else beside it on the New York Times list that you could conceptualize and really write something really marketable in that other genre that you're way more comfortable with. So I'm not saying, throw out your comfort zone out the window. I'm just saying.
And that's a formula for just writing bad erotica too. Like if you're just not into it, like don't go down that road.
Please do a good job, because for those of us who enjoy it every once in a while, we need for you to do a good job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that people have like a serious like creative conscious clash in some cases when it comes to writing to the market, and it feels like maybe it's like a cheat, like you said, it's like cheating your muse, or it's like giving in to the dollar or to other people's opinions. But I feel like there are 2 kinds of authors. There are the authors that have like one huge story within them, and sometimes that turns out to be Harry Potter, and sometimes that just means like you have one book and you really don't want to write for the rest of your life, and that's totally cool. But for the rest of us, like, I have a million books that I could sit down and write tomorrow. They're all kind of interesting to me, and I need to figure out, like you're saying, I'm not so great at doing a schedule.
Yeah.
And I need to figure out how, and I've got to get clues from somewhere, you know?
And I think that's what I mean. Like, I think that's the problem of most of us, because we're all kind of an artistic, creative type, and so we all have a million ideas, and so I'm not saying don't use any of those. I'm actually saying use those, but use them strategically. Right. If one of them is doing better in the market right now, then write that one first. That will help you pin down which to do next when you're kind of like, I have too many. And so study the market would definitely be number one, so that you're asking yourself questions like, what is in the top 100 of Amazon right now? What's in the top 100 of the genres I want to write in?
Another
so you can
good
stay
place,
in that genre and be creative.
Another good place to look is the sales and publishers marketplace, because you don't necessarily want to be married to whatever the bigger publishing houses are doing, but if all of a sudden you see that 10 different people have sold, let's use EJ's example, let's say there are like 10 baseball books that have gotten sold in various ways, you know that next fall there's going to be a lot of people pushing them, and maybe you can get one out in July and sort of ride the wave, or maybe you want to steer clear of that because you don't want the competition, but at least you can make an informed decision.
Right,
That's
exactly.
a good place to look for at least some bulk information that may or may not apply to you.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yep. I'm not saying go one way or the other. I'm just saying you need to know that information before you can make a decision that's best for you, that you're going to feel comfortable and creative with.
And I think the other point about that I've heard people talk about and I've heard you talk about is, when the publishers might say, like, they're saturated with vampire books, for example, after Twilight, but that doesn't mean that audiences are. So if you're worried that, like, oh, there have been too many Motorcycle Club books sold, like, there's a pretty big audience of people who will read as many of those as they can get their hands on.
There is. I'm really glad you said that, because I was in my notes, actually. I was going to say something like that about the vampire books. So actually, what I'm saying, the smartest decision you can make here is if you feel really strongly about a project about vampires and you think everybody, it's done and it's everyone's over it. That's not really true. Actually, what your challenge is to write a story about vampires that's so different it makes me have to read it.
Right. Like, so that's a good thing. Knowing that there's a hungry market is not mutually exclusive with doing it. You just need to know. You
got to be original. That's really what it is. It doesn't matter if you think a genre is tired. If it's tired, it's because it needs to be revived. You can always be that person to do that. That's more of a challenge, You just got to be that one, that different original spin on it. So, yeah, but you don't know that until you know what's out there. So number one is always study the market, and just know what's going on.
I'm sorry. I was just going to jump in before we get too far away from it. So we asked Twitter earlier when you were talking about your author services and helping authors. We asked them what's like the most difficult thing. Like if they could get help with any one part of this whole writing career thing, what would they get help with? And I'm starting to see a pattern.
Marketing.
Yes,
right?
Lindsay Lewis says, I'm horrible at promoting myself. It's on my 2015 bucket list. Work on websites, swag, etc. Kat Van Sil says, I'd like to be better at planning and keeping to my production schedule. Oh, and writing faster. Writing faster is a big one, too. I see a lot of people wanting to do that.
I wonder if they're too busy trying to figure out marketing instead of writing.
Right. At 23, Asper, I can't even pronounce this, says she's looking for agents while serving her country is the challenging part. I think that whole writing and day job thing is a struggle for lots and lots of folks.
Yeah.
D.A. Boda says, definitely marketing. He says, I hate it, so I hate asking for help with it. Dolly Adler says, I think everyone struggles with balancing writing and not in promo. I'm not tech savvy. And it makes it so much more hard. S.L. Cameron says, I'm tech savvy, I just struggle with promo and connecting with people. So I don't know if that's a reality or not. So one person says they're tech savvy and whatever, and then one person says it's not a key. So Molly Moran says, I struggle a lot with marketing, not knowing what works. So
yeah, that's so true. I did this exact poll with all the authors I knew when I started my coaching business to get this exact answer. What do you, if you could pick one thing to have more help, what would it be? Just to kind of gauge everybody. And yep, it was a huge, echoing, resounding marketing. So it's obviously still the same. So,
but the trick with the creative planning is that can really help to drive your marketing, and that's why we're talking about it first.
Right, exactly. Because if you know your project now and your project after that, then you can go ahead and start developing ideas now. Because the thing with marketing is that you're going to develop things if you're smart about it, and we'll talk about that on the business side. Both ends come down to strategy. That's my favorite word in my coaching business is strategy. You have to know why you're doing something, and if you don't know why, the chances are either A, you shouldn't be doing it, or B, you just need more information to know if this is the right decision for you. Because there should always be a reason. Down to every single giveaway that you run, there should be a reason for why you're doing it, and you should know what it is. So when you're developing a project, you can already be thinking ahead to the marketing that you can start putting in place now so you're not overwhelmed with it later.
All right, so planning. You're not just talking about plotting creatively. You're talking about planning your projects, studying the market, and then what's the second biggest thing to do in order to make sure that your planning and studying the market can actually work for you?
I actually had down that it's figure out yourself, figure out your own brain, which kind of speaks to what we were kind of already spinning off on, which means you're going to figure out the market, but then you're also going to figure out what speaks to you. So, like with the vampire example that you gave, you know, if that's really what's calling to you, it's not that you have to chuck it necessarily. It just means that that's more of a challenge, that you have to put it such an original spin on it that it makes me want to read it. So know your own brain, know what's speaking to you, know what you can't get out of your head, and it's okay to find a way to use those things, like whatever is strongest, that's fine, because we're artistic and, you know, we're all about our muse and what story is speaking the loudest and which characters we can't get out of our head, and that's fine. And that's great, actually, because that means you're going to write faster because you're excited. But find a way to put a spin on it that the market looks like it will respond to, or that your reader base will respond to.
So, for example, if you've only written, I know an author who I think is a great writer, and she's contemplating taking up a pen name because she wrote a really happy, cutesy romance, and now she wants to write stuff that's like edgier and totally different. And I keep saying, like, there's got to be a way that you can make these two things work. But I think a lot of people might feel kind of trapped either in success or in a project that seems really overwhelming and hard. So how do you figure that out? How do you really put those things together?
That is probably too difficult of a question to answer, like, blanket-wise.
Okay, sorry.
No. I mean, just for the market the way it is now, I think it depends on the author and, like, their backlist. Like, you were mentioning a pen name, and for what it's worth, my 2 cents is it's really hard to develop. If you're already established with an author name anywhere, my advice in the market and the way it is now is don't try to build a whole new pen name. It's just so difficult right now. I had another girl who I was coaching the other day, and I told her, I really think you could get more traction out of crossing over into another genre with the name you have now than doing a pen name. And obviously it depends on the person, but just the way things are right now, it's almost easier to do that than to try to start from scratch.
If that's your only reason, it's kind of like a fear-based reason, right? And it's like
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's never.
And that goes back to strategy. That goes back to knowing why you're doing something, and definitely we're going to talk about fear and not making decisions out of fear, because that's the worst mistake you can make.
I mean, there are reasons, like if I were to write pure erotica, I would take a pen name, but that's more for my family and my own privacy than it would be because of any other reason, and that's a priority for me. That's not like, oh, I don't think I can make it work. That's a strategy. Yeah.
Well, then and then you're making a conscious decision then to do it anyway, and to know that you're going to have to do extra work by starting from scratch. Yeah, and so it's a conscious decision. It's not like you're, you know, shooting in the dark or anything here, which I think a lot of authors do. We don't think it through. We're too busy being creative and fun and creating worlds and making stuff up, and then we forget to be business-minded. So.
Oh God, we're supposed to be fun. I didn't know we're supposed to be entertaining. Jesus.
That's kind of crazy. I don't know about fun, but.
Well, you know, it's like I think we're all just wired to be one. It's like one side of the brain or the other, and we don't naturally balance both sides very well, at least not automatically. So what are I was gonna say, what are the tricks for balancing both sides that can help you stay with your creative plans without shooting a hole through your business plans? I think for me, it's what I had as number 3 on my creative list tips, and that is to learn to stay on task. Okay. Because that kind of speaks to the creative end, because it's all about the project and staying on that project instead of kind of getting, I call them like squirrel moments, where you're like, oh, something shiny, and you go over here. You're like, I'm just going to free write today on this other story because it won't shut up. Well, it won't shut up because you haven't disciplined your brain to make it shut up. You know, you have to kind of become sort of this crossover into this business person at that point and tell yourself in a non-schizophrenic way to shut up. And I think creatively it comes down to taking your goal and your art seriously, that your art deserves to be taken seriously. It's not a hobby. It's going to be a job, or it is a job, and it deserves job kind of treatment. So if you say you want to get it done in a month, get it done in a month. If if you say the muse isn't speaking to me and I can't write today, well, then you just made it a hobby instead of a job.
I think that this is really interesting. I love this train of thought. So I think we condition ourselves when we're first starting out writing that any writing is good writing. Meaning, like, if you can just sit your butt in a chair and get words down of any kind, it doesn't matter if it's 14 different stories or whatever, then that's good.
And technically that is true. I would really like for it to all be in the same draft.
Right, yeah, but I think at its root, I think that's right. Like, I think that is the big challenge for everybody at the beginning is to really get into that. But I totally follow you what you're saying with this. Of once you become career-minded with this, and your goal is to make money, so you can't quit that day job that's giving you fits. That you need to make that transition to where that some writing can be bad writing if it's not focused in on what your target goals or what you're trying to achieve, basically.
Yeah. And it really just is about discipline. If it takes doing some free writing that doesn't have to do with your project just to keep your butt in the chair, fine. That's fine. Start with that. Definitely start with that. Just be disciplined about writing. You're not going to feel like it a lot of the time, and you're just going to have to do it anyway if you're serious.
But also be aware of what that is, because I've been in that position, unfortunately, too many times, and try to learn from it. But if you're really writing something and it becomes a huge distraction, like it's a huge distraction for the whole rest of your plan, and then you have to consider where that's going to land you. I mean, I've let myself get a series interrupted for other reasons that I felt were strategic, but at the end of the day, like, I still don't have my first series completed, and that's probably my biggest passion project out of everything I'm working on, and that's on me. That's on me having like trying to figure out my discipline a little bit more than I have. That's my goal for 2015.
Yeah, and that's a distinction too. It's like we're not advocating that like you don't, this project that you've been laboring on for 2 years that you don't like switch gears and go try something else if you're just stuck at it or whatever. I mean, that's fine, but I think when you set these goals, it's important to see them through. And speaking of that, on Twitter, we asked earlier, I asked how many people already had their, projects mapped out, like the projects that they plan to finish next year, like how many of them have them mapped out. S.J. Pajonas said, my goal for 2015 is to only write what I can pitch. If I can't describe it in one sentence, it doesn't make it into Scribner.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic strategy.
Stephanie and I actually learned that. We were sitting together for this signing, and we both have kind of complicated books, and I had an easier time describing hers because I don't know all the details as well as she does. She had an easier time describing mine, and I laughed. I'm like, 3 years into this, I still can't pitch this stupid book. And she was like, I really can't either. And it occurred to me that not being able to pitch a book is really detrimental. Right. And, it was like, I've felt this myself like so many times.
Which it may not mean like you need to scrap the project, but maybe you need to completely reimagine it, because if you can't, I just love that. I just thought it was a really great show.
It's brilliant. It's totally a brilliant mind shift, and I'm really impressed with it. So.
Kat Van Til says she has not yet planned out her year, but it's on her to-do list for next week, and that's a great reminder. There's still time. We have a few weeks of 2014 left. Take it.
We totally do.
Christina Ciricelli, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it.
You got it. I know her. Yep.
Awesome.
5 that are on deadline are mapped out. The others, well, the concepts are there. And smiley face.
5 on deadline. You go, that's girlfriend.
Impressive. Woo-hoo. I remember when one of the chats we were doing with Miss Audia Andrews, and she told me she is like a schedule monster, and she's really great at producing, and she works for Inkslinger, and she's lovely, and she has a family, and she's really very, very organized. And she said that she has her schedule mapped out, but she always makes a point to leave empty spaces in her schedule for family time and for relaxation and recharging, but also because that gives her room when she does get like a plot bunny or something that won't let her go. She knows that she can put it aside to finish her work, because in a month she will have some space. I thought that was such a good tip. Yeah. Even for somebody who's really, like, she clearly really thrives with schedules, and it makes her incredibly productive. But she schedules in time for whatever kind of creeps in and grabs at her imagination.
Oh, yeah, I do that too. Absolutely. And then it goes back to strategy, though, like, because you are going to be presented with new opportunities or new ideas or special projects that weren't on your list, and that's awesome. That's life. That's great, that this new stuff keeps coming into your life that makes you happy. That's art, and that's fun. But you have to know and like measure it against your strategy and your goals and go, okay, is this going to throw me off track, or is this going to put me closer in the direction that I want to go by taking it on and maybe pushing back other things or making me busier. So you have to just be really aware of what you're saying yes to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really smart. I love that. I do the same thing. I even schedule family time because I'm the same way. I just won't stop working if I don't make a point and write it down. So.
Right. All right. So did anybody have any big questions for Heather as far as creative planning goes, EJ? I know you're paying more attention to the Twitter feed, and I want to make sure if anything's come up that we ask for our audience.
Scan the Q&A feature just real fast and make sure. I'm glad you mentioned that because I always forget to check that thing. and it's loading and loading, so I don't know if it's
So while we make sure that we're not missing any important questions, where and why is it so important for creative planning and business planning to overlap? I know you talk about the word strategy, but how do you weave these things together so that they really work in your favor?
Yeah, well, I think that if you know why you chose a specific project to do next, then that can lead directly into your marketing and business plan as well, and it kind of makes that part kind of way easier or like a no-brainer. Like for example, Imitation just got optioned for TV. Hello, that's like super awesome, and all of my readers are like flooding, everything, social media with messages like, oh my God, we're so excited, we can't wait. So everybody's all about that right now. Everybody's all about Imitation, and that's YA. So the next 3 releases that I'm going to do are all going to be YA because that's what everybody in my circle is excited about. So I'm going to give them more of what they're looking for from me. And so, Deviation releases December 30th, which is the next book in the series. But even after that, my next 2 other books are going to be YA because I'm feeding them exactly what they're waiting for. And I'm going to do cover reveals enough in advance that, boom, boom, boom. Deviation comes out and then a cover reveal for the next one. And then the next one comes out and a cover reveal. And keep them excited about my YA right now because that's where it's at. So even though I have a bunch of NA ideas, I'm kind of backburnering them in favor. And it doesn't stunt me creatively, but that's being strategic, business-wise, and then still being happy and excited about what I get to write right now.
So the challenge for you is you think it's important to feed the audience that you have out of both like respect and business strategy. What do you recommend to authors who feel like their ideas are so across the board? We talked about strategy for the creative side, but how do people manage if all their ideas really are so separate? Like Christina, who just said that she's got plans for 5 books next year, she said that she's doing a horror series, and her books now are not horror. In fact, the one that I've read is amazingly sweet. What do you do?
Yeah, well then, that's a little bit of a different genre. So yeah, you're not going to have complete crossover with that, and so you need to go into it knowing that you're going to have to build a newer audience base for that particular book as well. Some of them are going to cross over, but not all of them, and so that's just something to know, and then you can plan accordingly. So your marketing is going to be based more on reaching out to places that you can't already, it's not going to involve like posting to your Facebook timeline because those people, are not all going to cross over to that. So now you need to have a marketing plan where you're going to reach people in other places. And so, like, off the top of my head, I would tell her she needs to go and partner with some horror writers and try to trade back matter and sample chapters in their books ahead of time so that people get excited and, things like that, that you need to know that so you're going to build a new audience and you can start doing that way in advance so that you make the most out of getting that new readership and already kind of have them in place when the book comes out.
So it's totally okay to genre hop and to do things that are different, but one, like, don't lower your expectations, just be aware of what you're doing. That sounds critical. And two, plan for that in advance by going to where horror readers might be and trying to introduce yourself to them accordingly. Don't count on your current fan base to all cross over because you're going to be probably disappointed with whatever.
Yeah, or, if you want them to cross over, then you need to show them similarities. Like, if they loved your sweet love story, then you need to point out the sweetness in the love story and the horror book and, find ways for them to connect to both. But, yeah, you have to see that in advance, and you have to put that in. The thing that gets me is when authors are like, oh, I need to be better at promo, or, oh, I need to work on my marketing. They say it like that's a singular concept or a singular set of tasks that never change, and it's not. It's if you talk to any publicist or anybody that works in like PR and marketing, they will tell you it's a marketing campaign because every single one is different, and it's going to be geared toward or based on the material that you're trying to promote at the time.
And that's also a good place too, where you go back to some writing stuff, some craft stuff of trusting your voice. Like Stephen King has written all across the spectrum of different kinds of stuff, and I've read most of it. But it's common. Like you start reading it and it's Stephen King. Like J.K. Rowling when she did the Casual Vacancy. If you read that book, it's her voice. Like it's in there. Like this kind of the snarky funness of it, and some of that kind of stuff is there.
Right.
And so you
got to show them that. Yep.
Right, exactly. You've got to keep that consistent from project to project. I did have a couple of. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
No, I was just going to say, Heather, it sounds like really making sure then if you're going to switch, like if you're Christina and you're going to switch, you're going to have to come up with like a specific teaser campaign that like lets your audience know that there is a horror aspect, because you don't want them to get there and be totally like unhappily shocked, but that really points out what the romance is so that they're drawn in and they're like, well, I don't usually read horror, but there's enough romance here and I love Christina, I'm going to check it out.
That can absolutely happen, because I got to tell you, I don't read horror. I'm a scaredy pants, like total scaredy pants. Like I'm still scarred from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I was like 13, and my middle school best friend talked me into it, and I hate her still for that. So not horror at all. But so Jeff Bryan, J.L. Bryan, I think he writes under J.L. Bryan, and he did a horror series. Oh my God, what was it called? Oh, the Jenny Pox series a few years ago. And I just met him because we just became friends, and so I read his writing because we were friends. But I got to tell you, that guy can write. Oh my God, that guy can write. And I read all of them with all the lights on and my toes curled under me on the bed, and like I was scared and I didn't really enjoy that part of it, I got to tell you. But the books were amazing, and I read them anyway because they were amazing and the characters were so real. And now I'll read anything that he writes, even if I'm not sure if I like the genre, because I'm just a total fan of him. And his voice is always the same, like you were saying, EJ. And so, like, when you have a fan, like truly a fan, they're going to read you because it's got your name on it and they love you. And then if you just go kind of that one step further and do like we were saying and show them a way they can connect, like give them that teaser, because A, it's going to connect them to the romance they love, or B, it's just going to connect them to your voice being in that same story, they're going to follow you. So some of them will follow you for that reason only. And so that's cool. So you got to play that up in your marketing and just kind of plan for that.
Well, and the trick that, from what I'm hearing from you, the trick to really connecting the creative and the business side is to realize that you're trying to build career readers. And that's important when you think of pricing, that's important when you think of genre, that's important when you think of subject matter, because you still have to like capture the right reader's attention so that the right people stay with you. Like if all your books are 99 cents, that might not ultimately build you a career that is sustainable. So let's talk about the business planning and why.
Well, and that goes back to the whole thousand. We've talked about a lot of times the 1,000 true fans or whatever. Like, if you can build that core fan base of whatever that are just diehard loyal no matter what you do, it'll sustain your career.
Yeah, and know who they are. Like, how do you know when you get that? So that's strategy again, which I'm going to say that word probably a bazillion times, but I mean, how you need to know when you've reached that. Like, do you have a newsletter list? Do you have Facebook? Because you don't own those names if they're on Facebook. Likes mean nothing. So, it's just really, you have to really know what you're doing and why you're doing it. When you're talking about marketing and promo, please don't think of it as this blanket, like looming giant monster blob thing that's the promo monster, because it's not that. It's so much easier and more fun than that when you break it down.
All right, so let's talk about, the most important parts of business planning.
Sure, yeah, okay. So one, and we mentioned this earlier, one is don't make decisions out of fear. That's when I was just saying, like the monster blob of marketing, that implies that you're scared. And a lot of decisions that I see authors making or stuff they're doing in their promo or marketing is, and which really falls into what we struggle with business, and that's why I keep using it as an example. But any aspect of the business side of it, they're doing it because they're scared. So they'll do a giveaway, like they'll go check their KDP account and see that their sales are really low, and they'll freak out, aka get scared. And So then they'll change their price down to 99 cents real quick or free or whatever for a few days, and then they'll be like, they'll hop over to Facebook and go, I'm running a sale, share it everywhere, and expect giant results. And then when they don't see giant results because they didn't plan ahead to have it shared anywhere else, then they freak out even more, and then they do something else, and it's reactionary. And that's not smart business. I mean, no company, no successful corporation reacts that way or runs their business that way, so we shouldn't either. We should be strategic and think ahead and don't just react out of fear.
So what would be the right way to put your book on sale to try and attract some new readers? Is there a time and a place for that?
Yeah, I would always say to plan ahead at least 2 weeks, because that's far enough in advance that your freak out's going to be kind of like over or not as bad.
So if you see your numbers are dropping, then you might want to say, okay, I need to do something. I'm not going to be able to do it today because I'm not going to get the results I wanted.
Go calm down. Go have a drink. Just calm down. You can't do any of this if you're freaking out. So the important thing is just to not be freaking out.
Even if you make every single person you know buy your book at 99 cents, you're still not going to hit any bestseller.
You're still not going to make any money.
So
And if they're
you're not going to make any money.
They'll buy it at $2.99 anyway.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
If they're really your friend, they'll be like, no, don't change the price. I'll buy it right now. But that's beside the point. That's not who you can depend on to make your career.
Right. Your Facebook feed is not going to, it's not going to give you results whether it's a sale or not. So that's not a cool idea.
Would you recommend, if you feel like you're I've seen a couple things work. If you really feel like your sales are slipping, you can add some bonus content to your book and maybe and then put it on sale, and maybe you'll have people that are like, oh, well, I totally want this extra story, so I'm going to spend another 99 cents. Or you could just take your time and pay for some ad or sign up for some free marketing support that'll support that price change to take advantage of it. These are the kinds of things you can do with some time.
Yeah, exactly. And all those take a little bit of time. They don't take a ton of time, but they take just enough for you to calm down and stop freaking out and figure out which one of those is smartest for you based on how many books you have out and how much of a reader base do you have and what's your price point with all these books and how much room do you have to maneuver to run a sale, or do you have to run it for free? Or, it really depends on the author and what you got going on and that kind of thing as to which is the best idea. But yeah, either take a step back and run a sale and take enough time to run it that you can blast it to all of the marketing or ad sites that'll help you get the word out. Or take a week and write a bunch of bonus scenes and call them deleted scenes. Or take a week and write the first installment of a serial spin-off of your series that has a really good fan base. Or, there's so many different ideas depending on what you want to get out of it and what you got going on.
Well, and just as far as pricing goes and fear, I was lucky enough for Thanksgiving dinner to have an ex-Amazon employee and a current Amazon employee at my table. And
nice.
I know, it was just luck. Good family.
Do you ask them about the drones? Because that's really what we all want to know.
Yeah, I know. Oh, my God.
Okay, wait. It actually didn't come up, but as soon as we hang up, I'm going to go talk to them about it. I'll report back.
I feel like the freaking Jetsons every time I think about the drones, okay? It's very exciting for me.
I agree. I love the idea of it. It's a little invasive, but whatever.
I'm okay with it. It's drones. It's cool.
But the information that I got, and I just recently, based on the advice from an author, put my book at a higher price point than I'd had it at ever, and then, of course, got the information from Amazon that was probably not the best idea. But basically what they said is that Amazon is fully supportive of sales and, sale pricing, but they're really, they just don't understand why something would start off as one price and then get raised. And I see authors doing this all the time, especially now that pre-orders are so prevalent. So they'll list their book for a pre-order at 99 cents, and then after, the first week or whatever, they'll jump it back up to $2.99 or $3.99, and that does make sense to try to reward those early readers and those early buyers. But the advice that I got was don't be so afraid. List your book at $3.99 even for the first 2 days of pre-orders, or $2.99, or whatever your top price point is going to be, and then you can put it on sale. Because if you try to go the other way, it will always be a little bit wonky in their mysterious system. So that's a fear thing, right?
Yeah, well, and a not knowing thing. I don't think nobody understands Amazon's algorithms. It is
Well, they're not for us.
And the Genie's Lamp and Charlie in the Chocolate Factory all rolled into one. Nobody will ever understand completely.
That's because we're looking at them from one set of data, and I could go on about this, and I don't want to take up the time. But
no, I know.
You know, but we're looking at them for our purposes when they're looking at them for like buyers. You know.
Yeah, I know.
But again, it goes to fear and planning. Yeah. So that lesson, I think, can go across the board. Like, don't start out low. Don't start out discounting yourself. Like, figure out a way that it's strategic.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
or Magic 8 Ball. I'm just throwing it up.
Well, and I've heard a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of authors, and the ones that I see that are, I know people that have sold, you know, tens and thousands of books and have great numbers, but they've always had 99-cent books, and they've never come close to making a living. And then, like you said, there are a lot of people who, you know, are not selling as many books, but they're still making money at this, and that's because they're protective of those price points, and they're also training readers and finding readers that are willing to spend a little bit more.
Well, and they aren't as scared. Like they have faith, obviously, in themselves and in their work, and the other thing is they're patient. That's the other thing that kind of goes with number one is we get impatient as well when we don't see the numbers, and I think that's why we do the 99-cent and then try to raise it and all that, because we're trying to like get in there and like take advantage of the numbers where they are now because we don't believe we're going to drop any lower or anything. So we have to be patient because it really is a marathon, not a sprint. So
my question is this to you all: how much time and energy should you invest in gaming this system? And I call it gaming the system for just a lack of anything else to call it.
Yeah.
Like fiddling with your prices and fiddling with, you know, how to do this or that and trying to guess Amazon algorithms. I see a lot of authors like expending a tremendous amount of energy.
Yeah.
Like just focused in, like they're zeroed in on this. They're like, oh, they switch their tags like every other week and like all this crazy stuff. And
well, for a while that was actually like helpful because Amazon was doing so much changes, like when they took tags away, but then keywords were a big deal, and so everyone was trying to figure out what the heck was going on and how it all works now. So I'm not saying you should have, but I'm just saying that's why I think they were doing it back then. But honestly, if you really want to know, I really think it should be 90-10. I think it should be 90% of your time writing and 10% all the other crap. Because you're never going to sell more books until you write more books.
Oh
yeah. Yep. Definitely.
Awesome.
90-10.
I just want to clarify that for our listeners.
The best way to sell more books is to write more books.
Hey.
Which is what we all really want to be doing anyway.
Right. Instead we're doing these stupid chats.
No, we like these chats. They do the same thing that Heather said about her business. Like, these always invigorate me, not just because we get that great advice, but they just, you know, they do. They keep me going. So what's your... We only have a couple minutes left, and I really want to make sure that we give people, you know, that last bit of advice to really get their planning going and to, like, catapult themselves into a happy start for next year. What's, like, the one thing you really want people to remember as we wrap up tonight's show? The most important thing to do?
Most absolute important thing, make a vision board.
Okay.
And that's probably going to sound cheesy if you've never done it. Actually, I know it's going to sound cheesy if you've never done it. You're going to be like, she's a hippie. I didn't even know. Seriously, make a vision board. I can't. This year has been amazing. And I just probably in the last, like, 18 months or so got serious about, like, really understanding the power of, like, saying your goal out loud and hanging it up and writing it down and all of that, and how it really, like, catapults you toward it so much faster. It's just so subconscious and weird, and I read all kinds of books on it now because it's fascinating that it actually freaking works, you guys, okay? I got really serious about goals last year, and I literally painted them on my bedroom wall. On my bedroom wall, in giant letters, it said, sell movie or TV rights for my book.
That worked.
That worked.
Right? I think Rain Man did the same thing.
Yeah. So you saw the movie Butterfly Effect where he had, like, all the papers.
Oh, I love that movie.
Totally how I work, actually. That's my house. But really, I mean, it's just been amazing how, and that wasn't the only one I've written down and it has come true. I mean, personal life stuff, I mean, with getting married and how that all worked out, I mean, that was definitely not set to go that way before, and just lots of other things. And so when I get serious about naming my goal, it's about not being afraid anymore, because hello, you can't be afraid and say your goal out loud. Another one I have is I printed off the New York Times list one week, but then I whited out the #1 spot and I typed in my book and my name and reprinted it and hung it on my wall.
That's awesome.
And so that's next. Yep. So that'll happen. So you got to do that. You got to name your goal and stop letting it name you, or stop being afraid. And seriously, cool things will happen. So that's my #1, is get serious about it.
I love that, 'cause that ties really back into our dream planning last week, and I think it really shows that loop, that connection between this, is that your mindset really, really, really strongly influences the actual tangible, things that you get out of this.
Totally, 100%. Yep.
I think that's Michael Simcoe said, "How the hell did we have a tweet chat mentioning fear with no one on air doing a crappy Yoda impression?"
Saving that for you, Michael. We were.
Right.
Well, we were singing The Lion King earlier. I mean, I was complete from that.
Does this spirit board that we have to fill out, does it involve peyote? Can we use peyote?
Oh, can we?
Yes,
God. And sit in a hut for a weekend, like one of those, what is it called? Like the theme huts or whatever?
That's on my bucket list. Utopia.
That's on my bucket list. Oh yeah, we'll do it at Utopia.
Right, we'll do a steam room, we'll do the sauna. Yeah.
I think Janet would totally be up for that.
We'll be like, we're gonna get so many good book ideas. We're hallucinating.
And maybe we can get the Tennessee Titans in there too, just for ultimate distraction.
We'll have to get Heather some finger paint so she can paint on the wall.
I love that.
Oh God, you don't want to see that. No.
I kind of do, actually. Well, I really want to thank Heather for joining us tonight. You have been a huge beacon of knowledge ever since I started peeking at this side of the business.
Good.
I just remember when I first went to Utopia, and self-publishing wasn't even something that I'd heard of. I saw a panel with you and a few other people, and I'd just come off a big week of the New York publishing scene where everybody was kind of scared and really unhappy, and then I saw you and a few other people, and you were like, woohoo, this is so awesome, I'm getting readers, I'm writing the stories that I want, I'm not waiting a year, and I was like, I want to play in that sandbox, that looks really freeing and fun. And I mean, I personally can't thank you for that enough, but now I think you're kind of a beacon for a much broader audience, and I'm so glad that we got to share your tips with our audience tonight. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, definitely. Really quick, if I can, I promised myself I would do this little plug, even though I hate doing these. If you guys liked what you heard and you want more information, I'm putting together this really kick-ass, premium, only for really freaking serious about your stuff authors. It's called Find Time to Write, and it has not even officially launched yet, so it's kind of a secret still. I'm putting it together with a fellow author coach of mine, a friend of mine, SM Boyce, and she's amazing too, so you should totally creep and check her out. But we're putting that together. It launches in February, so it's kind of a New Year's resolution thing. So if you're serious about clearing away all the clutter and you're really wondering how many minutes to spend on gaming the system, you should sign up for my newsletter list, and I will be sending that information out as it comes available to register for that.
And mention you heard her at NA Lit Chat.
Yeah, very cool.
Yes.
And are you going to do another collective call before that in case people want to get a taste?
Those go out on my newsletter list too.
Okay,
those are free. The next one will be January, and we're having a guest author actually talking about time management as well. Go figure. So
nice.
Yeah, so just get on my newsletter list. You can sign up at phoenixauthorinc.com, and I'll probably type that in the little chat window so you can see that in writing, but it's Phoenix like the bird, Author Inc. INK. And you can sign up there and get all the info.
Perfect. So we will make sure to tweet that out tonight. Thank you, Heather, so much. And thank you, EJ and Chris Fox, who's been helping us manage Twitter. And Kat, I'm so glad you were there tonight. And all our California peeps, or West Coast peeps who have hung in through the storm, and everybody else who joined us.
Stay dry.
Yeah, stay dry. And thank you so much for being here with us tonight and all year. This is our last live NA Lit Chat Hangout. We've had a blast doing this, and we can't wait to see you in 2014. We're going to be on Twitter only next weekend. We're going to have, or next Thursday, we're going to have a fun holiday party, kind of give everybody a chance to talk about what they've decided with their dream planning and their creative planning and their business planning. We might even have an ugly sweater contest if you'd like to post some pics. What? And EJ tells me there might be a pirate chat, so stay tuned for that information. If you don't know what that is, that's when everybody who can get onto Google Hangout manages to do it and just chit-chats and has a whole bunch of fun with the Twitter feed. So we hope you guys will join us for that fun next week. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, EJ. Thank you, everyone. And this is Amy Evans saying have a good night.
Yay, thanks, guys. See you later.
Bye, Heather. Thanks.